Have you heard of Wuthering Heights? It had a reputation, the type that could tear people apart. It had haunted readers for generations, since 1847 to be exact. Some said the place was cursed. Some said the people inside were different. Then, the young Heathcliff stepped out of the two-horse carriage, rain-soaked and shivering, and the moors seemed to hold their breath. And then he saw her, the girl whose wild energy made his heart race and his mind twist at the same time. For the first time, he felt alive and terrified all at once. Meeting her would pull him into a world he could never have imagined, and nothing would ever be the same. Welcome to Mending Hearts. Today, we explore a story that's as haunting as it is human. If you've read the Wuthering Heights novel by Emily Bronte, perhaps this episode will reveal the reasons in the shadows of their obsession and choices. And hey, if you're new to the story, get ready to step into a stormy world of passion, betrayal, and a kind of love that leaves its mark forever. Prologue. He arrived. The wind tore across the moors, like it carried messages from some other world, a place where rules were harsh and hearts were hardened by loss. Heathcliff's small frame shivered under his ragged coat, but not entirely from the cold. The carriage had stopped at a crooked, looming house. Wuthering Heights. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something unfamiliar stir inside him, a fragile thread of hope. An orphan himself, Heathcliff had never known a home. Not the kind with warmth or laughter, not the kind where someone waited up for you or even noticed if you were gone. His life had been a series of empty streets in the city, of doors shut in his face, of hands that only shoved him away. And yet here, on the crest of the moors, he sensed that maybe there was a place where he could belong even just a little. The house itself looked as if it were watching him, its dark windows reflecting the storm-swept landscape. The wind rattled the shutters, whispering threats or promises. Heathcliff couldn't tell which. He clutched his few belongings to his chest, eyes wide, heart a mix of fear and curiosity. A voice called from the top of the stairs, sharp and bright, cutting through the howl of the wind.
Hey, you're the new boy.
Catherine Earnshaw had curls that bounced when she walked. She leaned over the railing. Her gaze was piercing, a spark in her eyes that made Heathcliff both nervous and exhilarated. There was no pity in her look, only recognition, a curiosity that mirrored his own. For the first time in his life, someone seemed to see him. Not the dirt, not the ragged coat, not the outsider he had always been, but him. The raw edges of him that no one had ever bothered to notice.
Yes, Heathcliff said, his voice small, unsure, yet carrying the weight of a life that had learned to stay silent.
Nellie Dean, the housekeeper, moved quietly in the background, her presence steady and grounding, but Heathcliff hardly noticed her. His attention was captured entirely by Catherine, the wild, fearless girl who seemed to belong to the storm itself. As he stepped out of the carriage and onto the muddy grounds, a strange feeling unfurled in his chest. It was not entirely comfort, not yet, but it was the closest thing he had felt to it in years. The moors stretched endlessly around him, harsh and untamed, but in that wildness he sensed possibility. Perhaps here, among these wind-swept ridges and crooked walls, he might find a thread of connection, a spark, however faint, that could show him trust wasn't entirely meaningless. Catherine ran toward him, barefoot and laughing despite the rain, the water plastering her hair to her face. Her hand shot out, hesitating only for a heartbeat before it touched his shoulder. That single, fleeting contact was enough to anchor something within him, a recognition that even a small gesture could carry a world of meaning. In that moment, Heathcliff felt it, the fragile, trembling hope that maybe he was not entirely invisible. That maybe someone could see him, could care for him, and that the world, despite its cruelty, might hold a place where he could belong. And as the wind screamed and the clouds darkened, he let himself believe, just for a little, that belonging might be possible, even here, in this wild, untamed place. Hey listeners, ever feel like you finally found a place where you belong? Even just a little? That tiny spark can change the way you see people and trust them. Chapter 1: Childhood Bonds. Young Catherine Earnshaw now standing face to face with Heathcliff. And she was grinning. She was standing so close he could smell the fragrance like some flowers coming off her hair. She stood barefoot on the muddy landing.
Well, you'd better keep up. This place isn't going to wait for slowpokes.
Her laughter struck something inside him, something fragile but alive. He realized, almost painfully, that for the first time he felt noticed. Not the dirt, the ragged clothes, the outsider he had always been, but him. Someone had actually seen him. Mr. Earnshaw's voice boomed from the parlor.
Mind your manners, Kathy. He's your new brother, in a way.
Catherine wrinkled her nose but smiled. Heathcliff's heart caught on that word. Brother. And yet, even then, it didn't feel right. Whatever tied them together was already something different. Nellie Dean, the housekeeper, appeared behind them, hands folded, her presence steady and grounding. Come in before you catch your death in the rain, she said, but Heathcliff barely noticed. His eyes followed Catherine as she darted down the stairs, daring him with her grin. Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke, damp stone, and something sweetly domestic, tea maybe, or the faint scent of Catherine's hair brushing his face as she passed. The furniture was uneven, scratched in some places, polished in others. It was not perfect, but it was alive, and in that small, chaotic warmth, Heathcliff felt something he had never felt before, belonging, even if just a little. Over the next days, they explored every shadowed corner and crooked hallway. Catherine pulled him into games that required courage. Peek behind doors where the wind rattled the shutters, climb the banister where the boards groaned underfoot. She laughed at every stumble, every misstep, and slowly, hesitantly, Heathcliff laughed too.
Careful, you'll fall, she teased one afternoon as they raced across the hall.
I'm not scared, he muttered, though his stomach tensed.
You are, she said with a grin. You just don't know it yet.
And she was right. But it didn't matter. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel unafraid, at least around her. Trust, though small and tentative, began to root in him like a fragile seed. Sometimes, when they ran across the fields, their hands would brush, briefly, almost accidentally. But the contact lingered a heartbeat too long, and their eyes would meet, startled and aware. Heathcliff's chest would ache in a way he couldn't name, both terrifying and comforting. Catherine, too, would pause, her fingers brushing against his arm, a small spark passing in that simple touch, before they ran on, breathless and laughing. They grew inseparable. Left alone, the young Heathcliff and Catherine grew as fond of each other as any two people could be. A splendid place was never so beautifully formed as the union of their two spirits. The moors became their kingdom. Heather flowers underfoot, clouds racing overhead, the thrill of being unseen and unrolled, chasing one another over the moors to go as far as Gimmerton town and back. Catherine dared him to chase the wind itself. Heathcliff dared her to jump across the streams that carved through the hills. The young Catherine herself was never happier than when she was out of doors with Heathcliff. And in those moments, fingers brushing, shoulders touching while they scrambled over wet grass, whispered laughs close enough to feel the warmth of each other. They were wild things, mirrors of one another, bound by a freedom that existed nowhere else. For the first time, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he could belong somewhere. As for Catherine, she didn't understand it then, but when she looked at Heathcliff, she saw her own untamed self, staring back. He made her feel like the wind could never catch her, like she could outrun anything, even the world's rules. She never said it out loud, but sometimes, when grown-ups whispered about Heathcliff's place in the house, her laughter would falter for a breath. Somewhere deep down, she must have known. Freedom like theirs never lasts forever. In the original Wuthering Heights novel, it captured the raw, innocent intensity of Catherine and Heathcliff's early bond. A love rooted in the wildness of the moors, free, unspoiled by society, class, or expectation. Hi there, if you're still listening, thank you for staying with me. Here's a psychological take for you. Moments like these, first sparks of friendship and trust, remind us how small connections can leave a lifetime mark. Yes, you heard right, a lifetime mark. Chapter 2. Betrayal and Separation. But the house watched. Hindley Earnshaw, Catherine's older brother, didn't share her warmth. To him, Heathcliff was an intruder, a foundling his father had foolishly pitted. Mr. Earnshaw's health began to fail. When the seasons shifted, Mr. Earnshaw died, and the house changed with him. Hindley, returned from college full of swagger and bitterness, took over and became the master of Wuthering Heights. Then the laughter faded. Catherine and Heathcliff's adventures turned into stolen moments, brief escapes into the moors where they could still breathe. Hindley's resentment toward Heathcliff festering into open hostility. Then a handcuff here, a harsh word there. Hindley had the construction of a cage made for Heathcliff he hadn't seen coming. And then Heathcliff was sent away for a few weeks. The moors had a way of holding memory like water in their midst. Every gust of wind carried echoes of laughter, footsteps on muddy ground, and the brush of a small hand against his own. Heathcliff felt those memories like bruises, soft at first, then aching deep inside when he returned to Wuthering Heights after a few weeks away, still believing everything would be as it was. But the air had changed. The laughter that once wrapped around him now felt distant, faint, like a melody played from another room. Catherine had changed. The version of her he saw now, with delicate manners, the wildness in her eyes had dimmed. Edgar Linton appeared in her life. Edgar Linton was a family's close friend. Catherine every now and then she threw soft glances toward. A composure he had never known in her, felt like a stranger wearing her face. Heathcliff noticed, too glaring. His chest tightened each time she smiled at Edgar. That warmth, once his, was now reserved for someone else. But still, Heathcliff stayed for Catherine. He would have endured any insult just to hear her laugh again. One evening, Catherine caught him staring from across the hall. She paused, her eyes searching his face.
Are you upset? Catherine asked quietly.
I'm fine, he muttered, jaw tight, and then looked away.
You're not, she said softly, and the words hit him harder than any slap. You've always cared too much. Maybe that's why it hurts you now.
The words lodged deep, carving a wound that would never quite heal. Catherine wasn't blind to his pain. She felt it, as if it were a second pulse under her skin. But the world around her had begun to whisper rules she'd never learned to follow. What a lady should be, whom she should marry, how she should behave. Each lesson pulled her further from the girl who had once raced barefoot through the moors. When she looked at Heathcliff now, she saw both everything she wanted and everything she feared. Freedom and ruin, tangled in one person. There were nights she lay awake, hearing the rain against the windows, asking herself if love alone could feed them, clothe them, save them from the judgment of the world. And sometimes she hated herself for even asking. Later that night, he pressed his forehead to the window glass, the cold biting through his skin. The moors stretched endlessly outside, dark and indifferent. He whispered her name under his breath, again and again, as if the repetition could summon her back to him. But the house had already decided his fate. The next weeks blurred into a haze of frustration. It was Heathcliff. Hindley decided Heathcliff needed to be removed from Wuthering Heights for a longer while. They told Heathcliff it was for his own good, a chance to work, to grow, to learn his place. No one said the truth aloud, that Heathcliff's presence made Catherine's heart too loud, too visible. When the carriage pulled away, the sky was gray and heavy with rain. Heathcliff pressed his forehead against the glass, watching the outline of Wuthering Heights dissolve into fog. He didn't cry, not at first, but when the road curved and the house disappeared completely, the tears came silently, slipping down his cheeks. That was the first time he learned that betrayal didn't always arrive as cruelty. Sometimes it came dressed as care. He wrote Catherine's name in the margins of a notebook, smudging the letters with tears. Each stroke was a plea, a promise, and a curse. He wanted her, but he wanted justice too. Justice for being forgotten. Months passed. Catherine wrote once, then not again. Letters stopped arriving. The world beyond the moors swallowed her up. When Heathcliff finally returned again, hardened and quieter, he found Catherine was engaged to Edgar Linton. He saw them walking through the garden one afternoon, her arm resting in his, her smile practiced and soft. Heathcliff stood at a distance, feeling as though the ground had given way beneath him. He realized something cruelly honest. Being hurt by someone you care about rewires the way you feel about everyone else. In the novel, we see the source of Heathcliff's wound. That day, Heathcliff overheard Catherine speaking to Nellie, spilling her deep feelings for him. Catherine said,
I am Heathcliff. He's more myself than I am. Whatever our souls are made of, Heathcliff's and mine are the same. And Linton's is as different as a moonbeam from lightning or frost from fire. My great miseries in this world have been Heathcliff's miseries, and I watched and felt each from the beginning. My great thought in living is himself. My love for Heathcliff is like, if all else perished, and he remained, I would still continue to be. And if all else remained, and he were annihilated, the universe would turn to a mighty stranger. I would not seem a part of it. My love for Linton is like the foliage in the woods. Time will change it, like I'm well aware as winter changes the trees. My love for Heathcliff resembles the eternal rocks beneath, a source of little visible delight, but necessary. He's always in my mind, not as a pleasure any more than I am always a pleasure to myself, but as my own being.
Now, what you just heard is Catherine's confession of just how deep her feelings for Heathcliff were. Beautiful, isn't it? Unfortunately, that was not the part he overheard. And that was where fate takes a dark turn. Heathcliff only overheard part of her words she would marry Edgar Linton, but not the full picture. He heard just enough to cause a misunderstanding that would ignite the first hellfire in his heart. Enough to twist yearning into rage, love into a fiery obsession. Enough to make Heathcliff ran away, leaving from Wuthering Heights on his own accord. Catherine's decision to marriage to another, not him, became a fuel that would drive him for years. Even in solitude, he remembered the way her watery eyes full of yearning looking at his, her lips supple and slightly opened, her filled-out chest raggedly rising and falling peeking shyly from her bodice, the warmth of her breath near his ear when they hid from storms, the soft press of her body against his as they crouched in the stable. Those moments, innocent yet charged, became the only things that kept him alive. But they also poisoned him. Desire blurred into bitterness. Love curdled into obsession. Her marriage to Edgar sealed the transformation. The day he heard of it, something in him fractured. He wanted her, yes, but he wanted her to suffer too. He wanted her to know the ache she had left in him. That's how it begins, doesn't it? The slow turning of love into vengeance, longing into control. Heathcliff's story, from that moment on, was no longer about belonging. It became about reclaiming. To reclaim what he believed was taken from him against his will, what was stolen from him. Catherine's love had given him life, but her loss had also given him purpose. And Catherine? She was trapped in the quiet beauty of the Thrushcross Grange, sometimes woke in the night, hearing the wind claw at the windows, and in those moments, she would whisper Heathcliff's name into the dark, not as a call, but as an apology that would never find him. She told herself she had chosen stability, but deep down, she knew she had bartered her soul for safety. Hi friends, thank you for staying till this part. This chapter reminds us heartbreak reshapes you. When love and fear collide, choices are rarely clean. Catherine chose safety, Heathcliff chose obsession. Both lost themselves in the process. Sometimes the absence of love doesn't just hurt. It rewires who you are, down to the bones of how you trust and how you let go. Chapter 3. Return and Revenge. For years had passed. Heathcliff returned to Wuthering Heights. The moors had grown colder, or maybe he had. He stepped off the carriage and felt the wind bite through his coat, sharp and unwelcoming, as if the land itself remembered what he had once been. Before him stood Wuthering Heights, still crooked, still wind-beaten, and unrepentant. Its windows glowed faintly, not with warmth but with memory. Heathcliff's boots crunched over gravel. The man who returned was not the boy who once trembled in those halls. He was taller now, broad-shouldered, his face carved by time and silence. Whatever softness once lived in him had been replaced by something harder, colder. Absence had forged him, and bitterness had taught him how to endure. Catherine stood by the window when she saw Heathcliff returned. She ran downstairs to meet him. Their eyes met. In her, Heathcliff saw her hair, once wild as the wind, now fell in careful curls, each one a small surrender to civility. Her gown shimmered faintly in the dim light, a symbol of everything she had chosen over him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then her breath caught, and her voice came out barely above a whisper.
Heathcliff, is it really you?
He wanted to answer yes, but part of him wondered if that was true. The boy who had loved her had died somewhere along the moors the day she chose another. What returned today was what grief had left behind. He smiled faintly, a cruel, restrained smile.
It's me. Did you think I'd never come back?
You have. Changed. She stepped forward, hesitant.
So have you. Heathcliff replied. His tone carried no accusation, but his eyes did.
For a brief second, Catherine saw her own reflection in his gaze, recognizing what she had done and what she had become. She had learned to smile when she wanted to scream, to sit still when she longed to run, carefree, unrestrained. Safety had its own kind of suffocation. Behind her, Edgar Linton appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Heathcliff," Edgar called out. "I confess this is quite unexpected," Edgar said, poised as always, his voice condescending.
I only came to pay my respects.
Heathcliff's gaze slid over him with polite indifference. But respect was never his intention. He wasn't here for peace. He was here to disturb it. That night, as the household settled, Heathcliff stood outside Wuthering Heights, looking toward the faint outline of Thrushcross Grange in the distance. It glowed faintly against the dark horizon, that place Catherine now called home. He thought of her laughter echoing through those manicured gardens, of Edgar's soft hands and gentle speech. Everything about that world, refined, safe, acceptable, were exactly what he was not. A voice inside him murmured like an old wound reopening. You were never meant to belong there. But revenge, he realized, was another kind of belonging. So the plot began quietly. Hindley's debts were already thick as mud. Heathcliff only needed to nudge. A loan here, a favor there, small enough not to draw suspicion. Within months, Wuthering Heights itself would belong to him. When Heathcliff saw Catherine again, her beauty had turned fragile. She smiled too tightly, her skin pale, her spirit caught between worlds, neither fully alive nor ready to let go. The walls of her husband's home had caged her wildness, and it was slowly killing her.
I dreamed you would come back, and I dreamed you hated me, she said, voice trembling.
I did. But I didn't stop loving you either.
Her eyes filled, and for a brief, unbearable second, they stood as they once had, two souls tethered in pain. The world beyond them vanished. Time folded. Inside her, a voice whispered what she could never say aloud. that I am the ghost of my own choices. She had traded the storm for a house of calm, only to find it empty. But the illusion broke when Edgar entered the room. Catherine flinched, stepping back, her expression unreadable. Heathcliff watched the shift, the practiced composure, the mask sliding back into place, and something inside him burned cold. He whispered to himself that night, the words a promise, a curse. I cannot live without my soul. My soul is in Catherine. She is my life. So they shall see, every one of them, they shall suffer as I have suffered. With that, what had begun as love had long since transformed into design. Each move was deliberate, every cruelty precise. He was not simply reclaiming what he had lost. He was teaching the world how it felt to lose everything. Even so, late at night, when the moors howled and the wind clawed at the shutters, fragments of the old Heathcliff stirred. He remembered her laughter on the hillside, the way her fingers brushed his wrist when they ran through the heather, the ache of wanting to belong. Those memories clung to him like ghosts he couldn't exorcise. Because even vengeance couldn't fully silence love. It could only distort it, make it dangerous, desperate, and unending. Let's take a breather. If you're still here, thank you for listening. Here's what this chapter shows us. When love and pain fuse too early, the mind confuses destruction for connection. Heathcliff's revenge isn't just bitterness. It's the behavior of someone whose attachment wound never healed. And Catherine? She shows the other side of the same wound, how self-betrayal, once chosen for safety, can hollow you out from within. So here's the truth. When pain isn't faced, it doesn't disappear. It evolves. It turns love into punishment, and memory into a battlefield that never stops echoing. Chapter 4. Climactic Confrontation. The storm had returned with a vengeance, thrashing the moors, rattling the windows, and howling through the twisted eaves of Wuthering Heights. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Heathcliff and Catherine faced each other in the hall, flushed with anger and longing. The silence between them pressed harder than any words could.
Heathcliff, you have truly changed.
And you have betrayed yourself. Heathcliff shot back low and sharp. His hands clenched at his sides, shadows dancing across his face from the flickering candlelight, like demons in motion.
You've betrayed yourself. Heathcliff's words cut deep. She wanted to protest, to claim she had done what was necessary, that her choices were right. But inside, a smaller, truer voice whispered, relentless. He's right. I traded the wind and mud and laughter for comfort. I traded the wildness that belonged to me for a life I cannot fully love. Catherine's eyes glistened.
I never stopped caring either. But I chose survival over us. I thought I was protecting myself.
Protecting yourself? Heathcliff's laugh was bitter, jagged. Do you think you could protect yourself from what we are? From what we've always been?
She swallowed, unable to deny the truth. Every polite smile she gave Edgar felt like a betrayal of herself, of the fire inside her, of the boy who had made her feel alive. Her heart still knew the moors, the wildness, the freedom she had tried to leave behind. But that freedom had a name, and it was Heathcliff. And during Heathcliff's absence, her thoughts spiraled, often asking herself if I had loved him in peace. Would I have lost myself? Or was it the peace that killed me first?
We're destroying each other, she said. Her hand hovered, trembling, caught between reaching for him or fleeing.
No. We're showing each other the truth. For once, you cannot hide behind manners, fear, or comfort. You'll see me, Kathy. Really see me? Or you'll regret it.
The words cut deep, not from cruelty alone, but because they were true. Every pretense, every careful step in the years apart was stripped away. The intensity between them was unbearable and necessary. For a brief heartbeat, Heathcliff's gaze softened.
Do you remember the moors? That day you dared me to climb the banister?
I remember. And you fell, and I laughed. Catherine quirked a faint, bitter smile.
And yet I got up. Every time I fall, Kathy, I get up. And I always come back. Even when it hurts. Even when the world throws me away.
Heathcliff, we've hurt each other so much. I can't. I don't even know if I can forgive you. Or myself. She stepped closer, almost touching him, then pulled back, feeling torn inside.
We cannot undo the past. But facing it, facing each other, maybe that's the only way we survive what we are.
Heathcliff's hand brushed her cheek. Fleeting, electric. The ghost of every stolen moment. Every spark of passion and rage they had ever shared. For a fleeting moment, Catherine saw his eyes not as a man's but as a mirror, showing her all the unhealed parts she'd buried under silk and civility. We were never meant for peace, she thought. But God, how I longed for it. A shadow flickered in his mind, dark, unstoppable. The obsession that had tethered him to Catherine reached beyond her, beyond the room. He imagined bending hearts, fates, even time to his will.
I have not broken you yet. I have not done with you. I have calculated your weakness, and you shall obey me. You are mine, mine to command, mine to crush if I will it.
Even as he spoke, he felt the cruel thrill of inevitability. Love, absence, betrayal, these were no longer separate. They were fuel, shaping him, shaping her, shaping everything that came after. Catherine's hand went instinctively to her belly. The gesture, a quiet, intimate acknowledgement of new life, Edgar's baby, carried the weight of impossibility for what they once shared. Because even if she wanted to, she had a gnawing premonition she would not survive childbirth. Outside, the wind screamed across the moors, rattling the house as if the world itself understood the storm inside them. For a long moment, raw truth of love and obsession, rage and longing, desire and despair, inseparable. All that existed was the between them. Catherine's chest rose and fell, tears finally spilling free. Heathcliff's own breath came ragged. His eyes softened only in fleeting glimpses. They were each other's mirrors, reflecting each other's brokenness, each other's passion of a decade. This confrontation would not erase years of pain, but it forced clarity. And most of the times, truth hurt more than lies ever could. Hi there. Thank you for staying with us till this storm's end. Here's what this chapter shows us. When love grows out of trauma, it doesn't fade. It mutates. Heathcliff's fury is the face of an attachment that turned feral, while Catherine's collapse is what happens when the self keeps pretending safety is the same as peace. In the end, both are proof that unhealed love never disappears. It just changes its form, sometimes into longing, sometimes into rage. But here's the real takeaway. Truth doesn't set you free until it breaks you first. Chapter 5. Tragic Resolution. The storm had finally passed, but the moors remained restless, whispering memories through the wind. Nellie Dean, the housekeeper, moved quietly around him, placing a warm cloth on a nearby table.
She's gone, Mr. Heathcliff, he said gently. Meaning Catherine Earnshaw. Also meant all the love and life that had once filled the house.
Heathcliff didn't respond immediately. Catherine was gone. She had died giving birth to her daughter, a fragile little girl named Catherine Linton. He only stared, tracing Catherine's memory in the rain-streaked glass. Memories came like waves, her small hand brushing his on the moors, the sound of her laughter chasing the wind, the arguments that had shattered and bound them, the fleeting moments of tenderness that had burned too brightly to last. He felt her near, not as a ghost but as a pulse, alive in the child who bore her name. Heathcliff felt the absence in every corner, every shadow, every shutter rattling in the wind. Grief clung to him like a second skin, thick and unyielding. He stood by the window staring at the moors. They stretched endless and wild, untamed, like the feelings that had consumed him for years. The ache of longing, the sharp sting of betrayal, the raw fire of desire. They were all still there, lingering in the spaces between heartbeats. This moment, a bitter realization came, that love and obsession were threads so tightly woven into the soul that they could not be untangled without pain. Every time he saw young Catherine, the ache deepened. She was the living echo of the woman he loved and destroyed. In her innocence, he glimpsed what love might have been. If only he had known gentleness before rage. If only the boy who once craved belonging had been taught how to stay. Pain had become a cunning companion. It whispered that no one could be trusted, not even love. Perhaps Catherine's death wasn't only an ending. It was a transference, her unfinished tenderness reborn in her daughter's eyes. Years passed. The house aged, the Moores kept their secret. He wandered the halls, fingers trailing over the wood worn by her too. Sage. Even in grief there was understanding. Even in obsession, reflection. He had loved and he had lost, and the loss had taught him the language of surrender. One gray morning, the years heavy upon him, Heathcliff walked out to the moors again. The wind met him like an old Yend. He let it strip him bare, letting the memory of Catherine mingle with the present until the boundary between them dissolved. He closed his eyes and exhaled, the ache folding into him, familiar, calm. Pleat. And in that quiet surrender, he felt it. Release. Not joy, not peace, but the subtle lifting of the weight he had carried for decades. When his breath stilled, the Moores aimed to sigh w. With him, Wuthering Heights stood silent, the ghosts gentler now, the air lighter. Catherine's daughter would grow up beneath those same winds, shadowed and blessed by the story that had preceded her. Love, obsession, grief, they all left their marks, shaping those who see, aim after, whispering lessons the living seldom understand until it's too late. Nellie, older now, stood by the window and watched the horizon.
He is gone. Last. Nellie whispered to the wind. They are together now. The Moores have claimed what they made.
Nellie had witnessed the ups and downs inside Wuthering Heights for 2 generations. And for the first time, even her, felt it, the strange grace of release. The ghosts no longer haunted. They simply were. For Heathcliff, as for all who have loved without measure, the past was not punishment but mirror, showing what love becomes when hunger eclipses mercy. And sometimes letting go, even after everything, is the only way to make peace with the heart that never learned how to rest. Here, we can close their chapters with a look through the lens of modern psychology. Both Heathcliff and Catherine were victims of a system that punished vulnerability just differently by gender and class. Heathcliff represents rage born from rejection. Catherine represents grief born from repression. We can understand Heathcliff's intensity and obsession through 2 key lenses. First, early attachment trauma. As an orphan, he grew up without consistent care or safety, never feeling fully seen, never secure. When Catherine accepted him unconditionally, she became his anchor, the one person who gave him a sense of belonging. And that resonates deeply, because every human being instinctively craves acceptance and Imagine finally finding the one place you belong, and then having that anchor ripped away against your will. Wouldn't you, too, go feral? ABD, when you go feral like that, you forge your own emotional trap. You build a deep hook, clinging, obsessive, unable to let go, because losing that anchor feels like losing your life itself. But is it it? As for Catherine, her struggle between freedom and security was real in the 1870s. And it's still real today. Even now, people make the same trade, choosing comfort over passion, safety over the heart, and then spend the rest of their lives haunted by resentment, like ghosts in their own homes. Stories like Heathcliff and Catherine's remind us that early wounds and intense bonds shape the way we love. and sometimes trap us for life. If the story spoke to you, share this video. Maybe it will help someone else understand their own heart, too.